God has extravagantly shed His grace upon America. The scenic wonders of her 50 states are limitless. Massive mountain ranges like protruding vertebrae of giant dinosaurs divide the continent, twisting in and out of fertile valleys with their spectacular waterfalls and gushing mountain streams. Towering Rockies of the West snuggle tightly in blankets of snow, only to burst into exquisite beauty at the climax of winter's chill. But what could equal the ever-changing hues of the shifting sands and flowering cacti of the southwestern deserts, with their ghostly, silhouetted rock formations standing guard over the desert floor, or the splendor of Mount Hood's magnificent sunsets? Unless, of course, it would be the grandeur of Arizona's Grand Canyon. Its vastness is breathtaking. In fact, it has been called the most spectacular sight on Earth. Is it any wonder that this great land has captured the imagination of people around the world? Truly, they say, it is a land flowing with milk and honey. But surprising as it may be, it wasn't the beauty of the New World that beckoned the Pilgrim Fathers to her shores, nor was it an obsession for wealth or fame. They were a profoundly committed people, with a consuming desire to know God's will and then have the freedom to do it. This was the freedom that for centuries had been ruthlessly denied many people of the Old World, the oppression that kindled the fires of the Reformation. Of course, the Pilgrims were acutely aware of what had gone before: the Spanish Inquisition, the massacre of the Huguenots, the slaughter of the Waldenses, the burnings at the stake, the hangings, the whippings, and the imprisonments. All this was history not yet even grown cold. In virtually all the countries of Europe, whether under Catholic or Protestant rulers, freedom of religious belief and practice was unknown except to those who belonged to the established church. England's King James I, who authorized the 1611 English translation of the Bible, the book that proclaims liberty and justice for all, declared that the Puritans would have to conform to the teachings of the Church of England, or he would harry them out of the land or hang them. So the sparks of persecution spread, fanned on by the Protestant Reformation. It was a difficult time for those who chose to worship God as their conscience directed. Hunted, persecuted, and imprisoned, they could discern in the future no promise of better days, and many yielded to the conviction that for such as would serve God according to the dictates of their conscience, England was ceasing forever to be a habitable place. History of New England, Chapter 3, paragraph 43. And when God's hand seemed pointing them across the sea to a land where they might found for themselves a state and lead to their children the precious heritage of religious liberty, they went forward without shrinking in the path of providence. The Great Controversy, page 291. It was a rough and trying voyage, those 64 days crossing the Atlantic. The tired and ailing Mayflower Pilgrims, numbering 102, set foot on the shores of the New World November 9, 1620. Sinking to their knees, they thanked God for a safe journey and for a new home. Soon the good news spread throughout the Old World of a land where everyone might enjoy the fruit of their own labor and obey the convictions of their own conscience. Thousands flocked to the shores of the New World. By 1775, the struggle of the colonies for independence raged, and on the evening of July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was ratified after a moving appeal by Patrick Henry. The revered document penned by Thomas Jefferson declared, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Oxford History of the American People, page 223. 13 years after the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution was ratified. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution are known as the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment begins, "Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." This nation was established without the power of kingly authority and without a state church. Our forefathers were determined that America would enjoy the benefits of two great principles: civil liberty and religious freedom. Church and state were to be forever separated. America was destined to be a great land. The struggling, isolated colonies grew into a confederation of powerful states, and the world was amazed at the peace in their prosperity, without a church with a pope, and a state without a king. Well, you say, we have studied the prophecies concerning empires past, and how history testifies to the accuracy of their fulfillment, but what about the United States? Doesn't God have anything to say about this great land in Bible prophecy? Indeed, He does. In fact, it would be surprising to discover that a land destined to become such a vibrant and dynamic nation, one with such significant developments in religious affairs, had been left out of Bible prophecy. And of course it wasn't. 14 centuries before Columbus discovered the New World, a Bible prophet named John foretold America's unique rise to power, the time she would come to power, its type of government, and its influence in world affairs. Now that is surprising, you say. Perhaps, but God has spoken to His prophets through the ages concerning the great nations of the world and the relationships they held in regard to the destiny of His people. In Revelation 13, John describes a beast power that is identical to the little horn power described by the prophet Daniel. "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." Verse 1. John continues, "And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority." Revelation 13:2. You will remember that as we studied the prophecy of the woman in white and the dragon in Revelation 12, we discovered that the dragon was the devil working through the pagan Roman Empire. We found that this was the power that was to give his power, his seat, and great authority to the beast of Revelation 13. History records that Constantine, emperor of pagan Rome, donated his capital, the city of Rome, plus an army and a treasury to the bishop of Rome, thus fulfilling this prophecy. Verse 7 states, "And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them." John also states that this power would continue 40 and 2 months, or 1,260 years. This is the same time period as that of the little horn that Daniel saw. The beast of Revelation 13 and the little horn power of Daniel 7 both symbolize the papacy. Speaking of the 7-headed beast of Revelation, John writes, "And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast." Revelation 13:3. We have studied the first part of this prophecy and its fulfillment before. On the morning of February 15th, 1798, Pope Pius VI was taken captive by the French general Berthier. The Pope died in exile the following year. The power of papal Rome was broken. One of its heads had received a deadly wound. For decades, the papacy had little or no influence in the religious or political affairs of the nations. But according to Bible prophecy, it would rise again to power. The wound would be healed. Has the wound been healed? Certainly, today there can be no doubt about the papacy's religious and political clout around the world. The healing process was greatly advanced with the signing of the Concordat between Mussolini's Italian government and the Vatican in 1929. This treaty gave the Pope sovereignty over the Vatican city-state, restoring his political status. Now notice the next part of John's vision. The aged prophet saw a most interesting sight. Another beast or nation rising to power at the same time that the papacy received its deadly wound. "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon." Revelation 13:11. There was something different about this nation. The other beasts rose out of the sea, or populated areas of the world. This nation came up out of the earth, or wilderness area. Think for a moment. What young, peace-loving nation was growing in power and prominence in a wilderness area of the world in 1798? At the same time, the papal power was wounded unto death. Only one nation can claim that prophetic distinction, the United States of America. In just 2 centuries, it has become one of the most powerful nations on earth. It is significant that this lamb-like beast has no crowns on its horns, as the other beasts preceding it. In other words, it would be a nation without a king, having a church without a pope. Please notice the identifying characteristics of this lamb-like beast of Revelation 13. The description of prophecy pinpoints the United States as this power that would rise out of the wilderness. Notice the identifying marks. Number 1, it would come out of the wilderness, not out of the populated areas of the world. It did just that. Number 2, it would rise to prominence just as the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13 was receiving its deadly wound. That was in 1798, just at the right time. Number 3, it would be a democratic world power, as it had no crowns which signify a kingly power. It is a republic leading the march for democracy. Number 4, it would become a world power that would lead the rest of the world to worship the beast and receive its mark. There can be no doubt that God was using symbolism to describe this great country of ours and to show the place this country would play in the closing events of this world's history. What a wonderful privilege to live in this country, in which the Statue of Liberty has long been a symbol of the freedoms to be enjoyed within the borders of this land. But this will not always be so. The rest of the story is not so pleasant. The time will come when this nation, while appearing to be gentle as a lamb, will speak like a dragon, for the Bible says, "He spoke as a dragon." Revelation 13:3. Obviously, sometime, somehow, a change will take place in the government of the United States. In fact, it is already taking place. Usually, nations speak through their legislative enactments or laws. And throughout history, whenever and wherever the dragon voice has been heard, there has been persecution. The prophecy continues with a most startling announcement. Speaking of America, the Bible says, "And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." Revelation 13:12. Unbelievable as it may seem, the persecuting character of the first beast or papal Rome is to be duplicated by the lamb-like beast turned dragon, or the United States. The prophecy states that this lamb-like beast will cause them that dwell on the earth to worship the first beast or papal Rome. But you say, that could never happen in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. We have the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and our Bill of Rights to protect us from infringement against our liberties. We have a guarantee of separation of church and state. Any infringement of our liberties would be directly contrary to the principles of our government. So it would. This could only happen if the principles of civil and religious liberty written into our Constitution were abandoned or simply ignored.